Her body itched more than hurt, but the warplanes continually bombarding her body with cannon fire and missiles had begun to annoy Nemesis to the point where she could no longer ignore them. But she could not reach them either. Her fury was reaching a breaking point. To make matters worse, she had reached the edge of the city and found her way blocked by a thick patch of skyscrapers that dwarfed her.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. I am the Omni Viewer, and welcome to Kaiju Lit Circle, where titans can be found on any page. There are quite a few kaiju novels we have to get through in this series, but there's one in particular I've been alluding to for quite a while now, and seeing as how it's the first in a particularly long series we have to get through, I may as well start now. Let us take a look at Project Nemesis by Jeremy Robinson.
The story follows John Hudson, a man stuck in a job which even he realizes is a bad joke to which he has become the punchline. He's the director of Fusion Center P, a division of Homeland Security. In theory, it's devoted to investigating paranormal threats to the United States. In reality, so far at least, it amounts to little more than wild goose chases every time some crackpot or hoaxer claims to have seen Bigfoot. However, while investigating such a sighting in Maine with local Sheriff Ashley Collins, Hudson's job takes an unexpected turn for the terrifyingly real. They stumble across a secret government laboratory not found on any maps. The occupants have been slaughtered, and the only clue is the word Nemesis written on the walls in blood. The culprit turns out not to be Bigfoot, but rather a strange creature unlike anything Hudson or Collins have ever seen before. And not only is it growing, it's making a beeline for the city of Boston. Is this creature Nemesis? And what do the creature and the lab have to do with both a fossil found in Alaska and a little Japanese girl named Maigo who was murdered 2 weeks prior?
Since its first publication, Project Nemesis has come to be regarded as the kaiju novel, the one by which all others are judged. Some even say it's better than most kaiju movies. But I'm not one who just goes along blindly with the crowd, so if you think I'm about to sing this book's praises, well, you'd be right. But it's because I like it, not because it's popular. Indeed, Project Nemesis really is that good.
A large part of this can be attributed to our main character, John Hudson. Most of the story is told from his perspective, written in first-person present tense as if he's describing things as they happen in real time. Hudson has a lot of personality, with a colorful way of describing the things around him, by which I mean he swears a lot. He also exhibits an appropriate level of mixed frustration and befuddlement regarding the sudden appearance of a kaiju.
He spent so much time not being taken seriously that when he's suddenly confronted with a genuine threat in the form of Nemesis, he's initially met with a bunch of skepticism, and he feels the stress of having to think on the fly.
By following him directly in this manner, the book sets itself apart from other novels, creating a sense of urgency since the events are described as happening right now rather than at some point in the past. The supporting cast is well realized too, but the human focus is on Hudson, and he makes the story work.
Also worth noting are General Gordon and Katsu Endo, though I can't give you too many details on those characters just yet. A lot of what happens in this first book is set up that doesn't get any payoff until other books, but I can give you a few details.
Gordon is evil through and through, and the creation of Nemesis is largely his doing. As for Endo, he turns out to be the story's wild card. He spends most of the book acting as Gordon's henchman, but it's revealed that his true allegiance lies with Nemesis because he's apparently a Godzilla fan. He acts in ways that he feels will benefit the kaiju, not Gordon, so you're never entirely sure what he's going to do next. It makes him an interesting character to follow, but again, we don't get the full payoff in this book.
Okay, so the human stuff is all well and good, but what about the book's Eponymous Monster? Well, Jeremy Robinson set out to succeed where Cloverfield had failed by making Nemesis the American kaiju.
Yes, I know we already have King Kong, but most people don't count him for some reason. Don't ask me why. Anyway, Nemesis really does make for a great kaiju. In many ways, she...
Yes, Nemesis is female.
Is sort of a meta kaiju, encompassing as many aspects from the genre as possible.
In order to properly explain why Nemesis works, I will have to get into a few spoilers. But then again, these are things which are pretty easy to call early on. If, however, you really want to avoid any kind of spoilers at all, jump to this time to avoid them. For the rest of you, we can begin with the spoilers. Now, do you know how the three basic origins of all giant monsters are that they were either from space, from prehistory, or from a mad scientist's lab?
Well, Nemesis rolls all three origins into one. Nemesis was created in the lab found by Hudson and Collins, but the DNA was extracted from an ancient fossil, a fossil which doesn't belong to a terrestrial species.
Also, Robinson does a very clever play on the man-in-a-suit concept for kaiju, because Nemesis isn't entirely a pure monster. She has a human side to her, specifically that aforementioned unfortunate little girl named Mygo. And since I've brought that up, it's time to discuss how Nemesis works as a character.
The one word that describes Nemesis better than anything else is hurt. You see, Nemesis has the memories of both the fossilized kaiju and Mygo in her brain.
Yes, this is one of those stories where DNA contains memories. Just go with it.
This first story doesn't reveal the full origins of the original Nemesis, but we are told that she was tortured and twisted to become the ancient goddess of vengeance, slayer of guilty souls. Mygo, on the other hand, we know the precise origins of. She was a little girl murdered by her psychotic father, who was never convicted because he staged things so well.
As a result, Nemesis is a creature driven by two minds, both with a very simple understanding of the world, and both with a strong desire for justice.
Yet because of Mygo's influence, Nemesis can't shake the feeling that the slaughtering of everyone who stands between her and Mygo's father is somehow wrong. The result is one of the most complex kaiju characters ever written. She had grown increasingly revolted by the thought of consuming humans. It wasn't the flavor, she couldn't really taste them. It was just the idea. Some part of her said that eating humans was wrong. It was an emotion she had never felt before, not since waking up, and not in the time before, which she was slowly starting to remember as hazy images. She didn't know what, but something about her was different, and it was that same something that drew her south. Whatever force pulled her in that direction was bigger than her budding craving for justice or her unceasing hunger.
And of course, we've got to talk about the design. Nemesis was in fact designed by Matt Frank, the artist which many of you may recognize from IDW's Better Godzilla comics, as well as the comic book adaptation of Project Nemesis.
He sticks to Robinson's description while adding a few details of his own, and the image is immediately striking. Currently, there is no other kaiju that looks like Nemesis, and I'm hoping against hope that someone mass-produces a figure at some point, because I'd snatch it right up.
I have heard it said by some that Project Nemesis is what the legendary Godzilla should have been. That's right, folks. People say the book was better than the movie even when there's no connection between the two. Personally, though, I disagree.
If a movie of Project Nemesis ever does get made, I imagine it would be pretty close to Godzilla 2014 in terms of plot and screen time ratio. Nemesis isn't really on screen for most of the story, and a lot of what we see is more the aftermath of her attacks rather than the attacks themselves. Given how many people said that was a major problem with Godzilla, I don't think a Nemesis movie, if it stuck exactly to the book, would be all that different. Then again, I'm someone who likes the 2014 film anyway, so if a Nemesis movie turned out the same way, I'd probably once again find myself standing here telling everyone that I called it yet again.
Well, that whole thing is a tangent anyway. We don't even know if a Project Nemesis movie will happen. Then again, with Godzilla, Kong, Pacific Rim, and Jurassic World doing so well these days, maybe it's only a matter of time.
It's also worth noting that such a movie would no doubt be rated R. Believe me, this is not a book for kids. Not only is there a lot of strong language and not so subtle allusions to sexuality, but the violence is really disturbing at times, especially the stuff surrounding Mygo.
I bring this up because if you're thinking of getting this book for your kids, don't.
These are books written for adults, or at the very least, teenagers who have just discovered HBO and think swearing makes them edgy. Let your kids stick with Gamera until they're older. The original Gamera, not the 90s one.
One other thing that's worth mentioning is that the way this book is written can be a bit jarring at first. Jeremy Robinson deliberately breaks one of the golden rules of writing by switching perspectives and tense throughout. John Hudson's portions are written in first-person present tense, like this.
As we head for the exit, I glance right and see the large open fridge. There's a body in there. I saw it when we ran into the morgue. I slow and alter course. It's a woman. She has brown hair pulled back in a way that makes me think she's mid-30s, but there's no way to be sure. Her face is missing. She's wearing professional clothes and a lab coat stained dark brown by her own blood. One of her legs looks gnawed on, and there's a hole through her chest. I stop at the door, looking at the poor woman. Then my cop's side kicks in. Who are you? It doesn't take me long to find a pair of vinyl gloves. I pull them on and carefully inspect the body, while doing my best not to breathe through my nose.
Things told from the perspective of other characters, though, are written like this.
She could hear the men inside screaming in pain, ears shattered by the force of her roar. The sound drew her closer, fueling her thirst for destruction. Not to get ahead of ourselves, but this style persists throughout the sequels, and in the first book, it takes a lot of getting used to. Once you've adjusted to this stylistic choice, though, the book flows quite nicely.
Really, though? What more is there to say? Project Nemesis is one heck of a kaiju novel and a great start to the series. The sequels we will get to eventually. Let's not get ahead of ourselves. But in the meantime, you should definitely check this out. Until such time as we meet again, this is the Omni Viewer, signing off. I wonder how many people are going to click on this and think it's a Resident Evil video. Not my problem.